Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, what is up? How are you?
You know what? It's a strange question to ask right now, isn't it? It feels like how do you respond to that? But I'm so grateful that you have said yes to spending a few moments with us today to talk to us after honestly one of the this is probably the most significant year that I have ever lived and will for sure go down in history, let alone this last week, with
Yeah.
everything going on in our world, and the chaos. Before we jump in, I did want to know, how's your family doing right now?
Yeah, it is a interesting time,
It is
to say the least. And first, I want to welcome everybody. I know that's logging in from my account. People are
good.
jumping in. I'm like, what's up? It's an interesting time. I'm having to send my wife on some type of vacation. I'm like, baby, just get away. She's Black, and so for her, I think for me, I'm a little more wired, just for the struggle and
Right.
to fight, and the emotional capacity. I've been doing in this work for maybe the past 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
My wife, I try to get her some breaks,
Oh,
because it just emotionally, it just it weighs on her. And so we are good. We are navigating this challenge much like we have navigated COVID-19. And and so here we go. I am remaining hopeful, because there are individuals that are like you, that are white. Are you white?
yes, sir. White Australian.
White Australian, right? That all white, um, that see what we see,
Yes.
and are committed to helping us make this country what it was always supposed to be, and that is a place where every ethnicity and creed and so on and so forth would be celebrated, appreciated, and experience freedom on the highest level.
Come on, that's so baby. This is gonna be great. Hey, we started the year 2020. Everyone had their mood board up. Everyone had their expectations of what 2020 was going to look like. And I'm sure you're like me. Some days have looked around and been like, do we need a reset button? Like it just felt like from the get-go that there was thing after thing after thing. Did you make, I guess, resolutions, and then looking back, how was that expectation versus reality of this whole year been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things, I have a book coming out August 4th, and we've been working on it for a year.
Wow.
And I mean, it's called A Greater Story. You can pre-order. Shameless plug. But
no,
I think
love
for us, we have been, in publishing meetings every week, and it's like, well, what do we do now? It's honestly, when at the top of the year, we set the goal, it's time for the book. We're going to get it out. It's my life story. So it means so much to me, but it just shifted everything that we were ever going to do. And everything we would even think. It was just like, well, how do you succeed? How do you pursue? How do you even market at a time when people are going through so much?
Yeah.
You don't want to be tone deaf. You also have to respond to the moment. And so, I mean, we were in meetings as soon as last week and getting ready to launch some things this week, and we shifted everything. I said, I have to now respond to everything that's going on in our world.
And for people, I'd like to just stay there just for a moment, because you do have that book coming out by the same name as your show as well, A Greater Story. For people that might not know your story, obviously there's people joining from your account, but for our LightWorkers viewers, can you give a Cliff Notes version? I don't know if there is a Cliff Notes version of kind of your story where you've come out of.
100%. I mean, I'm born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, on the streets of Auburn Avenue, which is right across the street. My dad had a barbershop right across the street from the Martin Luther King Jr. Center,
wow,
where the tombs of Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King sit above ground. And so I grew up walking back and forth across those tombs, and hearing the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ringing on the property, seeing the mural of Congressman John Lewis, which is on Auburn, walking past the SCLC, which is Martin Luther King Jr.'s only organization that he launched from scratch. And so just growing up around Black excellence, it's interesting because I talk a lot in the book about how I was aware of oppression, but not limited by it, because of the examples that I had of so many freedom fighters that of the shoulders that we stand on, that did not take an excuse, that did not take no for an answer, right? They said, in spite of our challenges, we will progress, we will move forward, we will not be limited. If the door is closed, we will run through it. So that's my story. I was adopted 2 months with me and my twin sister. We got adopted from Augusta, brought to Atlanta, raised on Auburn. That's kind of our story. And so my perspective on race, because I came from predominantly African-American space to a predominantly white space, which is now getting more diverse. So it was very interesting.
Wow.
Shout out to Roma Downey.
She's always here, and we love her so much. She's absolutely incredible. We love you, Roma. She's the best. Hey, I'm so grateful that you gave that context for our people as well, because you grew up around the memory and even the current freedom fighters. Yeah. And in a sense, if you're doing the same thing right now, not in a sense, you are doing the same thing right now. And yet yesterday you and I were talking about the fact that when all of this happened, blew up a few weeks ago, you really had to make a decision. I have a book coming out. You have a lot at stake here. And it is no secret, and it should not be any secret, that unfortunately it is a risk to talk about what you have been so open and honest about. Can you talk people through that process of that reality of counting the cost and saying, I'm going to speak up?
Yeah, I was very concerned because what I have learned about fighting injustice and promoting diversity, talking about racism, in spaces that are predominantly white, that you lose something. And so for me, even as I consult many organizations on getting this question right, I've had to pick and choose which organizations I was really going to go deep with, and which ones I was just going to kind of, wet it up a little bit, because it is true. Anytime you create change, specifically around race, you lose something. And I think it is metaphorical in the history of this country that when anyone has really created a shift, at some point they have experienced something. And so, we lost Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because of his fight, because he pushed a little bit too much on that button. And so it was, how far do I want to go with this thing? I mean, how much do I want to say? Are people going to now say, that I'm a race baiter? Are people going to now say that I'm too political? Are people going to now say that I'm talking too much?
Often it can feel like when the Black community speaks out, white people, we get really focused on semantics rather than the message that is being said. Is that what you're finding is the biggest thing? I would love to know, from your perspective, what is the state of our country right now? Where are we at?
Yeah, we really are in a defining moment. Yeah. We have never been more postured to right the wrongs of history than in this moment. We've never been more postured. Wow. It is very reminiscent of the 60s and of the Rodney King riots. But now we actually have, I believe, more white people than ever going, we need to lift up the hood of America and look under and see what's wrong. Finally, more allies than we have ever had since the Civil Rights Movement. And that's what gives me hope, is that now I'll say this, it's unfortunate to me that it took rioting for us to get there. Yeah. And let me say this publicly, and this to your point, and I'm gonna jump back to a little bit of the arguments. To your point, yes, no, I don't condone rioting at all. And I feel like, white people need to hear Black people say that before they're like, I want to listen to you, right? It's like, but I got you, but are you for rioting or not? And it's like, okay, wait. Yeah. Why are we so focused on the riots? No, listen, here's the deal. The majority of Black people don't want riots to happen. Yeah. Because we don't want to give law enforcement an excuse to take us out. Exactly. So no, it's like, but the point of it is that what you don't hear is a lot of African Americans condemning riots at the highest level, because they're going, wait, those are my brothers and sisters out there rioting, and I know why they feel like they have to riot, even though we don't condone rioting. We know the pain that they feel, and they've chosen to lose it all. And it's, for somebody to get to the point to where they feel like they have to riot to be heard is crazy.
Yes.
And that should be the cry of America. That should be the cry, is like, okay, we were past the rioting conversation. Most of us don't agree. Let's put it over here. But what are we going to do about the people that feel like they have to riot?
Come on, yeah.
What are we going to do about the people that are trying to raise some concern? And I want to say this. I want us to think about how this is the most defining moment we've ever been in, and why more white individuals are now starting to speak out. Like, what was it about the riots that made it go, okay, now I care about it, right? I obviously believe in nonviolent means, but to your point, we are in a defining moment.
Yes,
we are, and I think that we should leverage this moment to truly go ahead and once and for all put an end to the separation and put an end to the injustice. Amen. And lift up the hood of America like never before. Clean out the cobwebs, set the captive free.
Come on. I'm going to take a lap. Seriously, that is so good. And I feel like you just mentioned, like, what is the thing that took so long? And I've been asking myself that. I feel like one of the things that has been so effective and such a huge way to mobilize society has been social media, has been this way we've been able to rally people, bring awareness to what is happening. It's been so helpful, and yet it's also been used in a way that has been negative and abusive as well. It's that, I guess, the blessing and the curse, but it has been so effective. I mean, I know you've experienced this as well. The DMs get scary when you start to speak out, but do you feel like that has been one of the effective mobilization tools, and how can we use it to stand up for change, to speak into solutions without creating this cancel culture that can sometimes be more harmful than helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of this is, one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn over the past couple of weeks was that you gotta stand up for what you believe in and be okay if other people don't. And what you'll find is that there are more people that agree with you than the ones that don't.
Wow.
So that's what I would say. I think we got to plant our flag in the ground, and we have to stand up for what we know in our hearts is right, and we have to ask ourselves the question: do we hear the cry?
Oof. And why, on that, do you hear the cry? Why are there people? How are there people that don't hear the cry? How? Why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
What a question. I think that when people are offended, it's very difficult for them to hear outside of their offense. And what's happening is, for many of my white brothers and sisters, and I have a lot of white friends, so many of them are, get it. They hear the cry, right? Because I've been talking to them for the last 5 years, and they're like, hey, Sam, if you're hurting, I'm hurting. Let's figure this out. But I think there's a large population, and it's not larger than the ones that hear the cry, but there's a large population of white people, and even, some minorities. I mean, but predominantly white people that I think believe that if they actually believe that some of this stuff is going on, that that their life is going to get worse, or that they've been doing something wrong. Many of them don't want to face that they've maybe been involved, and it's like, hey, it's all good. Like, there was a moment I realized growing up on hip hop that I was a part of the problem, as it pertains to the uplifting of women.
Wow.
And I'm not bashing hip hop. I love hip hop. I love hip hop as a genre. But there was a moment I realized that there was a large part of hip hop that dehumanized women. And for me, I was a part of that. And there was a moment I woke up and I said, whoa, I need to go apologize to the people that I've womanized. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes. And it didn't make me feel less about me. Mm-hmm. It made me feel more responsible for standing up for what's right. So I think for a large part of the population is just stuck on a fence. It's like, no, that's not happening. They don't want to believe that that's the America we could live in. No, America's not like that. No, that's not what's happening. No, this great country. No, no, no. And then one day, and I've seen it happen time and time again. And if anybody's white that's listening to me, one, know that I love you and I'm for you as well. One day it clicks. Mm-hmm. And when it clicks in a white person's head that people of color have been a victim of white supremacy, because white supremacy is the foundation of this country. What does white supremacy mean? Let me go back, because I know some people. Yeah. We're talking about 400 years of slavery, where white people have been in charge and have dehumanized people of color. That's what we're talking about. When it finally clicks to them that has happened to people of color, and there are still remnants today in the justice system and in businesses and in all these other things, they break down. Yeah. And that is the encouraging thing to me. When I see white people get it, and they go, I'm so sorry, Sam, what can I do to help? That's what gives me hope for this country. That's what gives me hope for this issue, that there are people of goodwill all around America that are rising from the ashes. Woo! They're rising from the ashes, and they are ready to make a change in it's every color, it's every creed, it's every gender. And we're going to get this thing done. Yes, and we're going to change this country. It's so encouraging to hear you say that as someone who has had my own awakening, if you will, in the last month, very recent. I've lived in America for 7 years, and it really does. You articulated that so well. I want to address that semantics issue because, like we mentioned, you are having a lot of conversations from people that would like to specify one thing. People that I think, like you said, are terrified this could be true because of what that means for them, rather than seeing the bigger picture and the fact that actually, like, this is an issue for all of us. I feel like a lot of white people would feel like that if a black person speaks up, that it almost silences them for some reason. And so they jump to semantics, and you've answered some so brilliantly, and you communicate to a white audience so well. So I'd love to know, when people say to you, all lives matter, how do you respond? Yeah. I just had this conversation like a minute ago, like right before this. I was just having this conversation. Well, the simplest answer that I give is always, just because we say Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that we're saying all lives don't matter. Correct. We're just saying Black Lives Matter, and we feel a need to emphasize it because in a lot of sectors of society, Black lives have not seemed to matter in certain cases. And in a lot of cases, we're talking about the death of George Floyd. We're talking about the death of Breonna Taylor. We're talking about the death of Ahmaud Arbery. We're talking about, the death of Dr. King. These are all of the things that we're talking about the fact that the average Black family in America makes $30,000 a year, and the average white family makes $100,000 a year. We're talking about systemic oppression. That's it, right? Yes. That's what we're talking about, and we're going, hey, we need to raise this up. Here's an example I use. Mm-hmm. There was a moment when America realized that whales were becoming an endangered species. Whales. So they created the hashtag Save the Whales. It was a movement called Save the Whales.
Of course it was.
Save the whales. Save the whales. Now, if somebody came along and said, save all the animals, you would go, okay, but we're talking about the...
Yeah.
We're talking about the whales.
Yeah.
Right? Just because I say save the whales doesn't mean I don't care about all the animals.
Sure.
I'm saying that there's an endangered species that we need to lift up. Here it is. Because if we don't lift them up, they will soon become extinct. And so that's one of the things that I say. I try to make it, to get people to understand. Because a lot of times people get stuck in the political agenda, and I get it, right? They get stuck, oh no, Black Lives Matter. You ain't trying to lift up Black lives. You just trying to push a democratic agenda. And it's like, okay, not all Black people, first of all, are Democrats. And not all Black people are trying to push a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I vote for the best candidate. And I'm saying Black Lives Matter because they're getting ready to be an endangered species. I mean, and so there's these things like, and so, and I think that, again, can you hear the cry?
Yes.
And so I think that people get caught up on political agendas, and they get caught up on their own thing. And it's just like, you're saying my life doesn't matter. And I think it all goes back to the idea and the belief that America is not like this. That's what it goes back to.
Yeah.
It's like, no, America is not like that. So why are you calling out your race? Call out everybody's race. All lives matter. Because America is not hurting Black people. And it's like, yes, there are. And can I give a history lesson?
Please. This
is important.
Yep.
For those that say America is not hurting African Americans. And I said this to a guy today. I was talking about a quote to Dr. King, and a guy responded with, yeah, but I mean, racism isn't as bad as it used to be. And I said, what are we doing? And so here's history of America. Let's just talk about police alone.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use this as a metaphor because I want to unpack this so that people can see it of all races. Because I believe that the people of goodwill, no matter what color they are, will recognize this and they'll hear the cry. Police were created for slaves. The first police force that ever existed, they were slave catchers. And and we're talking about slavery, 400 years of this.
Yeah.
The goal of police in America from the beginning was to make sure that slaves did not run away, was to catch them if they did run away, and was to discipline them if they were out of line.
Yeah.
We move out of slavery into segregation, right? We get free. We have the Civil War. There's some things that happen.
Yeah.
Police start to become the guardians of the law. And what's the law? The racist law that are in place. We Black only fountains, white only fountains.
Yeah.
And it was their job to make sure, no, you Black, don't go in there. No, you Black, you got to go through the back. No, you Black, you can't be with white people. Hold on, y'all at a concert, somebody sit on it, y'all on this side. And if you messing up, we gonna discipline you. We're gonna beat you. We're gonna stick the dogs on you. Stop, get away. And that's where we get all the stories of a Black man with a white woman and getting killed and all that at the hands of police. When we talk about the civil rights movement in the 60s, and we look at the history, right? We talk about Bloody Sunday. Many people don't understand Bloody Sunday, used for voting and all these other things. Bloody Sunday was Dr. King. He was marching these people, and they were peacefully protesting. And it was law enforcement that came and beat them down on the Edmund Pettus Bridge with dogs and billy clubs and all, just because they were protesting. They didn't do anything wrong. And here's the strategy of Dr. King, and then I'm going to walk us up to where we are now. The strategy of Dr. King during that time was this. He said, here's the deal. We're going to pierce the conscience of America and make America change. And we're going to show them the wrong that's happening here in Selma. So, and this is why he said nonviolence was a way of life. This is why he said we're going to use nonviolent means. This is why he said we're going to use nonviolent resistance and love in action to bring about change. So they did not retaliate, and they put the dogs on them. The news came out and filmed all of these black, bloody bodies that law enforcement, listen to me, had beaten down. It pierced the heart of America. It led to law change because America said, this is wrong. What are y'all doing? It's very similar to George Floyd in the net. Whoa. That's why media is so powerful.
Yeah.
So we move out of segregation into desegregation. And now we start getting black cops and some other things and whatever. And there was once a time when black cops could not even change in the same room as white cops. We're talking about we had just integrated, and the white cops are going, no. And it's a statement that Martin Luther King Jr. made, and he said, you cannot legislate morality, right? You can't legislate it. You can't make a law to make people love you. I can make a law to make sure you don't kill me, but I can't make a law to make sure you love me and that you're for me. And so even though we're desegregated, police are changing in other rooms. And so now we fast forward to where we are now. We're talking about 400 plus years of law enforcement policing people of color through racist ideology and a history of racism in our country. It is easy to believe that there are some remnants after 600 years, right?
Yeah.
Where there are pockets where police are still view black and brown people as less than. And operate out of excessive force and are afraid of us. And so just like there are remnants of that because of all of these years of oppression and racism, there are remnants of it in every sector of America.
Yep.
And that's what we're talking about. And that's why we say Black Lives Matter.
That's the best answer I've ever heard. Goodness gracious. And thank you for giving that history lesson. I didn't know. I've been doing a lot of this research and reading and documentaries, and I didn't know that wasn't taught in schools. The actual history of what happened, a lot of this isn't even taught in schools. And so no wonder there is systemic racism. No wonder we haven't grown out of it, because a lot of people didn't even grow up knowing about it. And I would like to talk about the word racist, because I feel like for a lot of white people, I'm trying to figure out why do people shut it down so much? Why are they shutting down this conversation? Why are they terrified of it? And I feel like the other day I had this thought of like, we see racism as you're attacking me, making me a bad person, rather than realizing racism is less a label and more a spectrum. At least I feel like it's more of a spectrum. And I feel like we're all on a journey of moving towards health and moving towards not being racist. But it's not about are you or are you not. It's about what are you doing actively to tear down those patterns, to tear down the systems and the generations of awareness, education, and then acting on it, activism, to tear that down. Would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the word racist is so, and this is why I say that, proximity changes everything. I always say to people, if you're not doing life with a white person, it's going to be very difficult to try to solve racism. If you're not doing life with a black person or a Hispanic, it's going to be very difficult to solve racism.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's happening on the other side. And so I think the word racist is so charged and hurtful. It's hurtful for white people when they get called it, or when they feel like when you bring it, it hurts them. And it's because of what America has done to us. And what America has done to all of us is they've taught us the idea that racism is wrong, but then they've taught white America that it's over.
Yes.
And they never taught white America that about the history. In other words, they wanted to push it aside because they were ashamed, and they knew if they I mean, they didn't teach it to me. I didn't even. The only way I learned about it is because I had to go to a black school, and a black school had to go, all right, we need to have Black History Month because you need to learn about the history of the country. But they want to keep all that away because there are many people that don't even want to remember. There are a lot of people that say, let's just stop. We can't keep talking about it. If we keep talking about it, that's how it continues. And I'm like, no, you got to keep talking about it because it's going to continue if you don't talk about it.
Yes.
Because it has already been continuing.
Yes.
And so we have to talk about it. And so when white people get called it, because they've not been taught about the history of the country, because there were white leaders in place that have said, okay, hold on, let's not talk about what happened. That's the dark part of America. A large part of this is, many of my white friends, they hate anything that feels bad. It's like, no, like, we got our nice house and we got our car and we got our kids. Why are you talking about that? Mm-hmm. That's over. Mm-hmm. I don't stop. And so you think about it, and it really, sometimes it's really as simple as that, right? Like, and there are leaders that are in place that are going, let's just better if we don't talk about this again. And yeah. And so we haven't talked about it. So now you have a white race that's growing up going, we're better. And you're like, no, that's racist, or this is a part of the racism. And they're going, oh, no, yeah. I'm not racist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I like what you said about we like to feel safe, because the amount of times I've said I feel unsafe when really what I was saying was I feel uncomfortable. And we have to get better. I just finished this book, White Fragility, talking about the fragility of us as white people. Yeah. We've got to get more comfortable with these uncomfortable conversations, and that is on us. That is not on you. We all have a role in this, and yet we can all abdicate our role. I could say, I'm Australian. I wasn't here. It's not really on me. You could say, well, I'm a black man. You did this to me. This is on you guys to fix this. But if we want change, if we want unity, if we want to move forward, we all have to take responsibility. We cannot abdicate. My responsibility of how I grew up is now to unlearn a lot of things. And so if we don't all take that responsibility, and yet so many people are saying, I'm going to stay out of it. I'm going to stay silent, thinking that staying silent is staying out of it, when staying silent is saying it's okay. We have to actively and aggressively combat racism if we do not want racism for our children and our children's children and our children's children's children. We've got to start to actively change it. I saw something you said in an interview where you followed up Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, which was a phenomenal follow-up. I would never try to follow up a Martin Luther King quote with anything, but it was a beautiful, addition on it. Martin Luther King says that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And you said that right now we are witnessing the bending. And I just thought that was such a well-articulated thought for what we're seeing right now. What would you say? So say if you had 30 seconds to the Black community globally, what would you say to them? And then I'm going to ask you what you would say to the white people of non-color.
Wow. I would say we must keep hope alive. We must keep hope alive. It can be easy in this time of struggle to lose hope. But understand this. When we talk about the idea that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Dr. King made this quote when he was talking to Black people that have given up. He was in the 60s, and they were saying, Dr. King, we ain't never going to get through this. This is never going to change. And he said to them, the moral arc of the universe is long. And so he said, because of that, we must never give up. We must keep fighting for what's right. And he said this, if we keep fighting for what's right, the moral arc of the universe will bend.
Wow.
And things will change. And it did.
Yes, sir.
And we've seen this in history happen so many times. We saw it with slavery. We thought we'd never get out of slavery. And we fought slavery. We ran away. We talk about Harriet Tubman and the Underground, Nat Turner, all of these different things. And we made it out of slavery. And then we made it out. We made it through civil rights. We made it through beating. We made it through lynchings. You don't think we can make it through this? We are standing on the shoulders of giants that made it through worse. Let us grab a hold to the hope that was found within them. Let us grab a hold to the strength that is found within them. And let us move forward. And let us never give up.
And if you had 30 seconds-ish to talk to the white community that is seeing this bending and want to take part, specifically to people that maybe don't have friends of color, what would you say to them?
What I would say to white people in this moment is, we need you in this fight. We've never needed you more. There will be things that you hear all around America and maybe feel as if you're not needed in this. But you are needed in this. If we're going to change systems that have been constructed by your ancestors, we need you to help change it. Because I say this all the time. We are all, we talk about history, but we are all a product of our history.
Yeah.
All of us. The reason that the average Black person makes $30,000 a year is because we inherited that. The reason we inherited all of that, right? There was a system of lack within our community. And the reason that there's so many fatherless homes in the Black community, we inherited that, the breaking down of the family, right? That's what we live in. We inherited the poverty. Yeah. We inherited the race. We inherited it. The riches and the wealth and the peace and the advantage, I would say, that all white individuals live in. And I know some of you may live in poor areas and so on and so forth. I get it. But the reality that you live in, you inherited generational wealth. And you inherited generational position and generational power. And so now it is time, and we need for you to help us dismantle these systems that were put in place to hold us down. I gave you the history earlier. You know it. A lot of your ancestors, I always say this, I talk to people, they ask me if I'm related to somebody that's white. I say, no, I'm not related to him. His grandparents or great-grandparents were probably my slave, they probably were slave masters. I'm not related to him. We just got the same last name. And so I would say to my white brothers and sisters, stay encouraged, but understand we need you in this fight more than ever. Please don't get offended when you hear Black people hollering about the things that they're going through that you may not understand. When you feel like it's an accusation on you, try to hear the cry. Don't get out of the game because you get a little criticism. Stay in this and understand this. I keep getting this question all the time. Do Black people hate us now? No. We want you to help us. Black people don't hate you. We want you to help you. A lot of them are mad because you won't help us. We need your help. We need to lock arms on this. Because if we do this right now, in this moment, this is the critical moment. This is a critical season. Shout out to Ernest P. I just saw him. This is a critical moment. This is a critical season. We've never been more postured to shift this country ever. This is the time. Let's not be sad. I know a lot of us, let's not be sad. Let's not be discouraged. Let's be excited that we have this opportunity. Guys, listen, if we lock arms together on this and we fight this, we can change this country once and for all. Stop fighting Black people on Twitter and stop fighting Black people on Instagram and help us change this country. You don't fight us, we won't fight you. There may be some people that do fight you, and there may be some people that do fight us, but let's just lock arms. We're not gonna fight each other. And let's do this.
Yeah.
Now is the time.